And so I've given a lot of thought, and I'm gonna let you out your contract too. As far as for you, Dawn, I still want to make music with you. I still want you to be signed to the label. And, you know, if I decide to put that together, Danity Kane, then, you know, you'll be the only member that'll still be there.
Sean Diddy Combs, once a mogul, now, well, worse than a rodent. Who would have thought the man who had it all would end up alone, abandoned by even those he once called family? His closest ally, the one who helped rise to stardom, turned her back on him.
He's a monster. He's literally a monster.
He's a monster, she said. But did she betray him? Or was she finally telling the truth, voicing the pain she's hidden for so long?
Let me see if y'all know this one. Some things change, baby. Some things stay the same. Sometimes love wins, sometimes it's a losing game.
Dawn Richard was born on August 5th, 1983 in New Orleans, Louisiana. From a young age, she had big dreams. She had a fierce passion for music and the arts. Growing up in a tough neighborhood, Dawn knew she had to fight for every opportunity that came her way. As a teenager, Dawn's voice was her power. She had this raw, powerful sound that could make heads turn. She started out performing in schools and local events, but she knew if she wanted to be taken seriously, she'd had to leave New Orleans behind and chase the bigger opportunities in the big city. And that's exactly what she did. In the early 2000s, she moved to the heart of the music industry, Los Angeles. Dawn faced rejection after rejection, knocking on doors and sending demo after demo. Dawn's big break came in 2005 during the height of reality TV's popularity. Diddy, the mogul behind Bad Boy Records, was looking for a new girl group to launch as his next big project. He held auditions for a reality show called Making the Band 3, and that's where Dawn's path crossed with Diddy's. The show was intense. As the weeks went by, Dawn rose to the top. She made it into the final group, and Danity Kane was born. The group quickly became a sensation, with their debut album topping the charts. And Diddy? Well, he was the man who had given her that chance. But Diddy, who had once been the mentor guiding her to stardom, soon became a controlling force. He was known for being tough, ruthless, and expecting nothing less than perfection. At first, Dawn admired him. She saw him as the man who could make her dreams come true. But as time went on, something started to shift. Diddy's management style was all about keeping them under his thumb. The pressure was intense, and as the group's popularity skyrocketed, the tension behind the scenes started to boil over. Dawn had made it to the top. But what price would she have to pay for it? Was this the game she wanted to play? Did she really want to be a part of this whirlwind that was pushing her to her limits? The more she got entangled with Diddy's world, the more she realized that fame and fortune might cost her more than she ever imagined. The bright lights of fame weren't the only things that came with being in Diddy's world. Behind the cameras and flashing lights, Dawn quickly began to experience the darker side of Diddy.
I love you, man. Bye. I got my MTV out. Savage! I'm a savage! Oh! I'm a savage! Whatever I want, I'm going to get! Whatever I want, I have to get!
At first, everything seemed perfect. But as time passed, things began to unravel. The working conditions were intense. They were pushed to their physical and emotional limits, with barely any time to rest. The girls were overworked, exhausted, and deprived of basic needs like sleep and food. They were often confined to rooms, isolated, and threatened if they tried to leave. In an environment where only perfection was tolerated, Dawn found herself under constant pressure. But it wasn't just the physical toll that wore her down, it was the psychological abuse. Diddy's management style was harsh, domineering, and cruel. The girls weren't treated like people, they were treated like objects. Gender-based insults were hurled at them, and their self-worth was constantly undermined. Diddy himself crossed a terrifying line. Dawn and the other women were subjected to verbal abuse, groping, and even physical assault. Diddy would restrain her, lock her in cars, or trap her in places, creating a sense of fear that she couldn't escape from. But it wasn't just Dawn. She witnessed other women being treated the same way. She tried to speak out, not just for herself, but for the other women Diddy allegedly abused. Dawn was threatened, her safety, her career, and her life. She felt the cold grip of fear closing in around her, as if every word she said, every attempt to expose the truth, would be met with an even more horrifying experience. For years, Dawn stayed silent, suffocated by fear and the pressure of the industry. But the weight of the situation began to take its toll on Dawn. Finally, after years of enduring what she believed was inhumane treatment, Dawn found the courage to step forward. The case against Diddy was already growing. There were more than 120 victims who had came forward, and it was becoming clear that Diddy's actions weren't isolated. This was a pattern, a deeply rooted problem. Dawn knew this was her chance to speak out. She could no longer stay quiet. The silence that had haunted her for so long was finally broken, and Dawn was ready to confront the man who had caused so much pain. As Dawn spoke to officers from the US Department of Justice, she knew that more criminal charges were coming. She knew the fight wasn't over, and that it was going to take more than just one voice to bring justice. Diddy has orchestrated a toxic, abusive environment, but he wasn't the only one responsible. There were others who had turned a blind eye. Dawn wanted to see them held accountable too. The story was just beginning. The web of abuse was deeper than anyone had realized. The question now wasn't just whether Diddy would face the consequences, because he would. It was whether the rest of the people who allowed this to happen would also be brought to justice. Dawn had opened the floodgates, and with it, the truth was finally out in the open. But what else was waiting to be uncovered? After years of being trapped in an abusive cycle of fame and manipulation under Diddy's control, she finally took the steps to break free. But what she didn't expect was the uphill battle she would face, not just against Diddy, but against an entire system designed to silence victims like her. The world was beginning to take notice of what she had endured, and it was all coming to light after Diddy's arrest in September. He was now facing criminal charges of trafficking and racketeering. While Diddy straight up denied all the accusations, the evidence was stacking up against him. Dawn was one of many victims who had filed lawsuits against him, and her claims were only the tip of the iceberg. Lisa Bloom, Dawn's attorney, spoke out with conviction. "I think we're going to see a lot more accusers come forward," she said.
She did not want to hide. Why should she hide her head in shame? She has not done anything wrong.
Bloom believed there were hundreds of victims who had been subjected to Diddy's alleged abuse over the years. However, many of these victims had remained silent, intimidated by Diddy's power or the legal traps set for them. Diddy's empire was built on secrecy, blackmail, and fear. Non-disclosure agreements were often used to prevent people from speaking out. Dawn, however, was ready to break the silence. She has suffered enough. As more civil suits piled up against Diddy, his lawyers denied all accusations, calling them false and manufactured. But Dawn's allegations weren't the only ones that were being heard. The more people came forward, the clearer it became that Diddy's reign was built on a foundation of exploitation. Dawn alleged that she had witnessed Diddy's vicious temper on numerous occasions. He wasn't just a businessman, he was a bully, terrorizing anyone who stood in his way. When Dawn spoke out, trying to get others like Casey Ventura to stand up and share their stories, She was met with threats of physical violence. She was scared, terrified even, of the trouble that Diddy could unleash on her. And yet, despite the threats, despite the years of pain, Dawn refused to remain silent. As the criminal case against Diddy progressed, it became clear that there were others who were aware of his actions. Diddy couldn't have carried out his abuse alone. His employees, his associates, the people who turned a blind eye. Dawn wanted them all to face justice as well. Despite the mounting evidence against him, Diddy remained defiant. His legal team continued to deny the charges, calling Dawn's claims and the others false and baseless. They even tried to discredit the witnesses who had come forward, like Kalina Harper, a former member of Diddy's group, Dirty Money. Harper publicly claimed that Dawn's allegations were untrue and didn't reflect her own experience. But to Dawn, this seemed like a classic case of witness tampering, a desperate attempt to silence the truth. Diddy's legal team may have believed they could continue to manipulate the narrative, but Dawn wasn't backing down. It wasn't just about the lawsuits or the criminal charges. It was about standing up for what was right. For years, Diddy has used his wealth and power to intimidate people, to keep them in line, and to make sure they stayed silent. The wheels of justice were turning, but they were slow. Dawn knew that the road ahead was still filled with obstacles, both legal and personal, but she also knew that she was no longer alone.
Dawn had the choice to file the case as a Jane Doe, and she chose not to do that. After giving it a fair amount of thought, she wants accountability, she wants justice.
As Dawn stood at the forefront of this fight, she could finally see a future where she wasn't living in fear, where the truth would no longer be buried under layers of lies. The battle wasn't over yet, but Dawn was ready to face whatever came her way, and ready to bring Diddy's empire to its knees. But what do you think? Would justice prevail? Could Dawn truly break free from the chains of her past? Let us know in the comment section below. If these shocking revelations intrigued you, be sure to watch more of the story unfold. Don't forget to subscribe for more.